Oh, thank you all. I'm deeply grateful to be here. That Pax Christi Metro New York brought me to New York here from Iowa to be with you, dear friends, at this critical time for our country, for our church, and for the world. Because of this gift, I was able the last 3 days to stand with the Veterans for Peace and their allies at the United Nations, the U.S. Mission to the United Nations, fasting and vigiling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and for humanitarian aid there. Tomorrow morning, I plan on joining them and others outside St. Patrick's Cathedral, pleading for the lives of the Palestinians, as well as for the integrity of the church. Franz Jagerstatter, martyred for his resistance to the Nazi regime, said, "If the church stays silent in the face of what is happening, what difference will it make if no church were ever opened again?" This honors an occasion for reflection for me. In October, it'll be 50 years since I arrived at the Catholic Worker here in New York. I was 19 years old, a dropout, and here to begin an education. Kate Hennessy says of her grandmother, Dorothy Day, there is pain, difficulty, and an odd exhilaration in allowing and acknowledging Dorothy into your life. It will lead you down a path you have little control over if you are true to it. Most days I'm grateful for where those formative 4 years have led me, but sometimes not so much. The blood and fear in the headlines today do not begin to convey the fierce urgency of our time. As for many of you here, I was part of the exhilarating movement in the 80s. Millions of people in the streets worldwide demanding an end to the nuclear arms race that, if it had been left unchecked, would surely have devastated the planet before now. It was never enough, and the threat never went away. But there were hugely significant reductions in nuclear weapons and hope for the general elimination of those weapons. But in 2019, President Obama announced a $1 trillion program he called stockpile stewardship. Nuclear weapons, rather than a curse to be eliminated, are now regarded as a precious heritage to be passed on to future generations. Those decades of reductions of nuclear weapons were no longer viewed as a sign of hope, but were seen as regretted as years of neglect. This last January 16th, the U.S. National Nuclear Security Administration Administrator, Jill Ruby, announced that the old B-61 gravity nuclear bombs had been replaced with new, improved, more flexible, more precise, more easily deployable B-6112 bombs. The NNSA, the National Nuclear Security Administration, she boasted, has got its mojo back. And only a few days later, Jill Ruby and 300 other employees of the NNSA were given the boot by Elon Musk. So in February, I followed the news of the fateful meeting between Donald Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine from a cell in a German prison. And I was following the news from that prison when it dawned on the European leaders that the United States was not a reliable partner. After all, and many of these leaders pledged to plunder their own nation's resources and build up their own arsenals. Some of them said they were bringing back conscription. Some leaders, though, rather than cut ties with the U.S., pledged to increase their contributions to NATO. And much of Europe, it seems, is joining the U.S. in a moratorium on cutting down on carbon emissions at this time. The fact that we are here now again after so many years, proves to some the futility of our efforts. But I believe we're only able to stand here today because we protested then. The need for mass movement like the world saw back then could not be more urgent than it is now, and I have both fear and hope watching for it, waiting for it to come. In the meantime, I know that mass movements are not made by people waiting for mass movements to arrive. Mass movements depend on people joining with a few others to speak and act for peace the best they can in their circumstances, and who are willing to risk apparent failure in their efforts. Considering the enormity of the danger the world is facing, through our small efforts, protests, vigils, jailings, even the most dramatic and self-sacrificing of them, do they make any difference? In our movement, I think there is a false dichotomy between being faithful and being effective. Pete Seeger said this, though. I'm convinced that if the world survives these dangerous times, it will be because of tens of millions of small things, he said. Perhaps the best, most effective contribution we can make to save the planet will be for each of us to accomplish one or two of the tens of millions of small things that need to be done. The only solution is love, said Dorothy Day, echoing Jesus and the prophets. She also called nonviolent resistance the only sane solution. And I'm growing to think those are two ways of saying the same thing. With the world the way it is, we cannot dismiss loving our neighbor, even loving our enemies as ourselves, as what Catholics call the counsel of perfection, or as a utopian, impractical, unreachable, maybe even dangerously sentimental ideal. Love today is the only pragmatic option. Albert Camus called realism the art of taking into account both the present and the future. And it is clear there is no realistic course open to humanity other than to lay down our weapons, learn to care for our planet, and share its resources equitably with all. The alternative is the end of life as we know it. I just want to, in closing, acknowledge my Catholic worker friends who are here, who I continue to learn so much from. And also, you'll notice in the program, the Nevada Desert Experience, a group that I work with, bought an ad for our peace walk every year during Holy Week from downtown Las Vegas, the nuclear test site, some 60-some miles away. Last year we had 7 New Yorkers join us.
Wow.
So I want to make that invitation, and my colleague with NDE, Vera Love, back here, and Alan and Rebecca have been on the walk. So talk to us, and the contact information is in the program, and I hope to see you, some of you, in the desert next Holy Week. Thank you.